Thank you so much, Ollie. I'm just setting up over here. We've got lots of stuff. So, thank you. Hello. It's great to be here. There's lots of amazing people in the room. It was great to see Ollie again, because we just had a little chat, and we knew that we recognised each other, and I'd worked out there was this Leeds connection, and we kind of felt our way through it. Eventually we realised where our lives had collided before. Disciplinary hearings. Those were the words. The best ever student they ever had at the Institute of Communication Studies, who never came to any of the lectures or seminars because he was too busy doing other amazing things. When they talk now about all the amazing things he does, I don't suppose they mentioned that he didn't actually go to any of the sessions that they were running in order to fill his brain with some other stuff. He got his own stuff in his brain, and he made good use of that, so that was good. Moving along. So there's lots of great people in the room. You've all done lots of different interesting things. You've all got particular projects and stuff you're going to talk about. And the program today is full of lots of different interesting cases and startups and people talking about the very particular and specific things that they do. I've done research and collaborations and projects and things. And you might like to hear about all the detail of those things. I'm not going to do any of that. Instead, I've just picked out some big, broad points, because presumably my role here is to start with some big, broad points. And you know, with these things, you get asked to create a title for, you've been invited to do things in your life, I'm sure, and you create a title for it. So I said 6 timeless truths about holistic innovation, all of those words spewed out of my brain. And then, you know, a few more weeks pass and I have to actually make this talk. So I'm like, right, okay, 6. Why 6? I think 6 because it's quite a nice number of arrows on a pretzi. Not so few that you feel underwhelmed, not so many that your brain starts to ache just looking at it. Timeless truths, because I am, of course, intimidated by the range of people doing incredibly cutting-edge things here. And one of the things that I like to do is to think about the way in which, you know, creativity didn't just start with the internet sometime in the 1990s, but has been a thing people have been doing and making lots of amazing things for many thousands of years. And I'm not a historian and mostly don't know anything about that. But I like to be able to make connections between things from the past and things now and see how people did things in the past and how we can do them now and see what we can learn from them. So there's a little bit of that in this. But I think I better make a start and start clicking. So that was my title. So that was the timeless bit. I'll explain the holistic bit in a minute. That's me. So we invite you to use the CASInnovate hashtag on Twitter. Those of you who are still using Twitter, despite the fact it's been going for a long time and people have talked about how it's failing and then Donald Trump made it all look very embarrassing. Still a really useful tool. Such a shame that we now associate it with certain things we read in the newspaper every day which make us feel sick. I have a website, davidgauntlett.com, which has got lots of stuff on it like that. If you like any of the stuff that I talk about, you might want to look at that. You don't know what that stuff is yet because I haven't done it yet, so I'm about to do it now. That's that. So holistic innovation. What was I thinking when I wrote that phrase down? I still haven't. I was going to do it on the train. But I still haven't Googled that phrase to see if it's probably a thing, isn't it? It's probably like you're thinking, oh, yeah, Phillips and Jarry, 1983, I love that book, isn't it? But I haven't Googled holistic innovation because then it would pollute my mind with whatever somebody else thinks it is. I'm just doing what I meant when I wrote it down as the title for this talk. And what I was thinking about was how basically it's about the transformational values embodied in the thing that you do. There are those, perhaps, hopefully. But then this works best when these are also the values that are embodied in your whole process, the way you do things, and the whole way that you are as an individual or a company or an organization. So if you don't have a clue what I mean by that, I'll explain it a little bit more. It's about taking a broad, holistic approach to things so that you strive to have brilliance and particular values, not only in the thing that you make, but in the way that you are, the way that you act. And that's probably a thing that marketing and business school people have talked about a lot, probably. I'm not from a business school, so I'm blissfully ignorant of all of that. And I'll just give you some of my things about that, which are likely to be different, because, for example, they include a man who makes something out of wood and a stand-up comedian. So so this is like the thought. If you're just here, and you think, I'm going to make a thing there, and you aim to just make this very straightforward linear journey from there to there, a bit like Ollie was saying. Like, it might work. If it does work, that's brilliant. But often we need to have a broader experience. We need to be mixing in other kinds of things. There's lots of learning that goes along the way. And things work better in, as Ollie mentioned, I've worked for 12 years with Lego, and I think Lego is a great example of a company which really lives its values. I can tell you, you probably imagine it's true, I think, probably. But the Lego people, the people who work for Lego, they're not. They're human beings, come on. Those Lego people, as I will continue to call them, and they are just really nice and great to work with, and they tend to be quite expansive and interested in all different kinds of ideas, pulling in lots of different influences, connecting with lots of different kinds of organizations. The people they collaborate with, it's not just like other toy companies, for example, which would be incredibly narrow-minded, or just other people in Denmark, say. They're very broad and diverse in all of the things that they do, and they have a really nice ethos. So in the bit before I started collaborating with Lego, we had a project with the BBC. And you know, the BBC, public service organisation, sounds, you know, all of the great values that we may associate with the BBC. But working with the BBC was essentially just a very sort of corporate experience, despite the fact they're not meant to worry about viewing figures, per se. They are incredibly concerned about the attention that they get, and they want things to be popular, otherwise the government might try to kill them off, except when they get too popular and then the government tries to kill them off for that reason. All of these things, they're having to constantly think about how they're viewed publicly, forever terrified of being criticised and killed by the Daily Mail. So they have to be extremely cautious. And that wasn't a great experience. Also, they thought that the role of collaborating with researchers meant that we would turn up and we would go, oh, we see what you've done there, that's great, and write a thing saying how great they are. Which, you know, the thing that they were doing was all right, and I had some thoughts about it. They weren't really interested in that because they just wanted somebody to turn up and sort of validate what they'd done. And insofar as today is a bit about how universities and other kinds of organisations and companies can work together, I think the really great things happen when you just start with a blank sheet of paper. You just sit down together because you've somehow met, you've got some interests in common, and you work through things together. Then you can do great stuff. And in all of the things I've done with Lego, they're very keen to sit down with you at the start of a project and think very openly and widely. That's my holistic thing again, about what we might be doing. And the BBC example, sadly, I'm not kicking the BBC per se, but that was basically the opposite of that. I mention it because it's kind of surprising, because you'd think that of all the places, the BBC might have a kind of university kind of culture, but it didn't. Well, that bit didn't. Lego, surprisingly, did. And of course, Lego is unbelievably successful. It's one of the most successful companies in the world, one of the most recognised brands. And the way they achieve this is not just by, funnily enough, it's not just by being very sort of single-minded business people. Of course, they are doing that, of course. But they make a broad range of connections. They work with lots of different kinds of people, and they take quite a broad, open kind of approach. And they're always learning. Their values are about play and creativity and learning, and that's what they're always doing. So that's embodied in the organisation. And the more learning they are, the more creative they are, the more playful they are, the more successful they are. This is literally true. That's what they discovered since around that slump period in the early sort of 2000s, when you may know Lego wasn't doing well, at a point where it might have been taken over by Mattel or some horrible other company. But it came out of that by being true to its values, by being true to the Lego values, embodied in the Lego brick, that sort of very basic symbol of creativity, and then working out from there. I wasn't planning to say any of this stuff about Lego, and I better get a move on. That was meant to be like a passing 10-second slide about a holistic approach. So a different thing that sort of confirmed this for me was this book called Why We Make Things and Why It Matters by Peter Korn. It came out in 2014, I think. And when I see books like this, like they come up on Amazon, which suggests them to me, and I think, basically, you know, I'm a busy person, so forgive me for this. I think, oh God, have I got to read that? That's not a very noble thought. It's like, oh, that's one of the kind of books in my space. I did a book on Making is Connecting. Here's a book called Why We Make Things and Why It Matters. So I think, oh, I'm going to have to read that now, am I? Along with the other 100 books I've got piled up. And I made an excuse for myself about how I didn't really need to read this one, even though it sounded quite good. And then I couldn't remember what that was. Then I came, so I left it, basically. Then I was in Rough Trade, the bookshop, about a month ago, before Easter anyway, because I read it over Easter. And even in Rough Trade, a record shop, that's a record shop, not a bookshop, in Rough Trade they had this, and I thought, well, crikey, because in Rough Trade, it must be kind of interesting or something. And I picked it up, and straight away, it opened at this. I just opened it at a chapter called Second Epiphany. And I thought, well, that sounds good. I'm immediately captured by that, because what you see from this is he's had an epiphany. That's nice. It's such a big epiphany, he's dedicated a whole chapter to it. It's like, whoa, must be a good one. And I like the way that you can tell from those two words, he's the kind of guy who's written a book where he's willing to put aside a whole chapter for his second epiphany. It was somewhere near the end, so I could tell there weren't going to be like hundreds of them, taking up my valuable time. And also I was intrigued about what was the first one, of course, because once you hear somebody's second epiphany, you're like, yeah, but what was number one? Let's not worry about number one. I flicked through to find what the second epiphany was, and it said this. This is me literally browsing in Rough Trade book, record shop. It turns out he's had to write an artist statement. He's been a woodworker. He's been making furniture for 17 years. That's who he is, this guy. He makes furniture. And I'm going to go back while you look at that. I remembered the excuse I made for myself by why I didn't need to read it is because he was a furniture maker, so I thought, well, furniture's boring. and I'm interested in basically creative self-expression, and that's probably not the main thing for furniture makers. I was wrong. I'm often wrong. We should celebrate wrongness, of course. All of those are very wrong thoughts. Dismissing furniture like that is absolutely vital in everyone's lives. You sit down with it, it's all part of, furniture's vital. And the idea that it probably wasn't very interested in self-expression because he was just making chairs, that was also very cruel and wrong. I know that now. I've read the book, okay? So I've forgiven myself. I hope you can forgive me too. The second epiphany was this. So he'd been making furniture for 17 years, and then he was in some kind of workshop, kind of at random, where he was asked to write an artist statement. And they sort of spent all day trying to write the sentence that captured what they did, and what he ended up with was this. I'll just start up here, because he says, the artist statement that I wrote for Arlene, that's the woman running the workshop, that night, included a sentence that brought my emerging ideas into focus. His thing is, my own values became clear when I eventually realized that the words I used to describe my aesthetic goals as a furniture maker, so this is what he was trying to do in the furniture making, integrity, simplicity, and grace, also described the person I sought to grow into through the practice of craftsmanship. So I really liked that. It spoke to the kinds of things I've already been talking about. That it was about his whole life. He'd literally been thinking, he hadn't realized this before. It was maybe surprising. 17 years, chipping away. He had time. He maybe could have thought of it earlier, but he didn't. He knew he wanted to make furniture, and this is nice, of course. It was good that he spent 17 years thinking about this, with integrity, simplicity, and grace, and then he realized after the 17 years that that's what he wanted for his whole life as well. You might, by equivalence, think that we could read this as meaning for his business, for his organization, his whole way of being. So I think that's a good example of that. And I've got another example of that, which includes Jerry Seinfeld, that'll be coming up a little bit later on, as long as I get a move on. So the thing about having 6 points, and me thinking to myself, oh, well, half an hour, 5 minutes each, very straightforward, that obviously goes completely wrong when you start talking about the stuff you've put up on the screen. So thankfully, I was aware that this would happen. And I'll go through some of these quite quick. But I'm going to talk about connecting, I'm going to talk about lots of things, not actually by talking about lots of things. Collaboration, doing stuff, inspiration, and deciding to do it. So that's what's going to happen. So we go around like this. This is giving you a sense of our journey together during the next 18 minutes. Connecting widely. So this is a thing where I've already mentioned trying to do this. In particular, in the book I did called Making is Connecting, which I'm thinking about more at the minute because I'm doing the second edition of Making is Connecting, which is a nice thing to be doing, incidentally, because you get to do a whole book, but you don't have to write all of the words because it's already full of words. You have to delete words to put in new words. That's quite nice. I talk about a range of different things, so just to give you a couple of tasters, in one bit, there's a bit about Rosika Parker, who's a 1970s feminist, so she's not thinking about creativity and the internet and stuff like that. 1970s feminist, writing about embroidery in the 17th century. And she talks about how, on the one hand, well, an embroidery is obviously a marker of femininity. That is a thing that embroidery has historically been. But at the same time, she describes it as a weapon of resistance for women then and now. Because it created for them, having an embroidery project, created for them the opportunity to have like this time to yourself, this time that's your own, through working through a project that you take from start to completion, which is very satisfying, and give them a sense of, I wrote down the words in case I would forget them, agency, acceptability, and potency. So agency, that you can do a thing in the world, potency, similar, but it's this thing that you actually create a thing. First there's nothing, then you make a thing, then there's a thing. You've made the thing. People can see the thing. And it affirms the self when they like the thing that you've done, or you might like the things that they've done as well, and it gives you a thing to start a conversation with. Giving people meaning in their lives, basically, the meaning of making. Then I link that through to other things like John Ruskin and William Morris, which I won't talk about now because that'll just take up too much time. But it's that thing about trying to make connections between creativity now and creativity then. In particular, like with the embroidery thing, I'm going to go back just to say what the point was. This is what comes of racing on too much. But I think the point there was that you can equate that with like what people do with digital media now. It's also about trying to create a thing that is your own, that is self-expressive, that puts your stuff out there, gives you a sense of potency because you're making the thing, and then other people see it and they respect it, and you start conversations. That was the kind of connection I made there. Okay, that's that one. I said I'd go quick. I'm going to go even quicker, as long as this works. This is about lots of stuff. I populated my thing by going writing 6 words. This is the second of the words, so lots is a weird word to be writing down, perhaps. But I always still like the idea of the long tail. These days, the idea of the long tail is kind of derided by some people who say that it hasn't really played out in the way that people thought it would. You know the long tail? You're sort of business school people. You know about the long tail, don't you? The idea of the long tail was, I don't want to explain, I'm going to take up too much time on it, but basically it's like, in a world, in a digital world, you have loads and loads, this is all stuff. The stuff goes on and on and on. It's a massive long tail of it. In the past, we could only have like a small amount of stuff because we sold it in shops and it was just the most popular stuff. These days, you have the long tail of like everything on YouTube, everything on iTunes, etc. All of that stuff. And there's loads of it. In the business sense, people talk about this because there's the exciting business opportunities to be taken from being able to sell stuff from the massive long tail, like all of Amazon's profits. Well, half of the stuff that Amazon sells is stuff that nobody's got any interest in except tiny little pockets of people. All of that. They sell lots of popular stuff, but they also do extremely well by selling lots of stuff that mostly nobody wants. But somebody wants it, and that's what counts. So you've got that massive long tail. I just like the long tail, basically for this kind of reason, that it's just better to have lots of interesting creative things than a smaller number of popular polished things. And I work in kind of media and communications, or at least I did, and in that there's a lot of people who seem to be harking back to this kind of golden age when you just had like newspapers that were really well edited, with sort of very well done, very professionally done, and they just filtered out all of the stuff for you and just give you a good body of facts. Of course, nobody in media and communication studies actually believes that, but they seem to be harking back for that for some reason. Whereas these days, there's just all these people on Twitter and YouTube and everything saying lots of things, and you can't do anything about it, and you can't check it very easily and so on. I like lots of things. I think lots of things is good. Just having lots of stuff is potentially inspiring and exciting. It's an exciting environment to be in. If you hurl yourself into YouTube and start making things, it's true that you're sitting somewhere in that long tail, and it's hard to get noticed. But all of that stuff going on is itself exciting, I think. And being part of that is good. I also thought about lots of things when writing this. This is the only quote, I guess, in this Prezi, and it's from me. So you can draw your own conclusions about what that means about my personality. But this was from in a book I did in 2015. This was like the best bit. So less self-celebratorily, if that's even a word, I'm saying this is like the only good bit in the book. In the book, it's got a box around it to show you that it's a really good bit. Nothing else has got a box around it. This was the good bit that I was pleased with. The book's got other things in it too, you know, but this is the good bit. I end up saying, for various reasons, we should look at media, this is about media at the start, we should look at media not as channels for communicating messages and not as things. Better to think of them as triggers for experiences and for making things happen. They can be places of conversation, exchange, and transformation. Media in the world these days means a fantastically messy set of networks filled with millions of sparks, some igniting new meanings, ideas, and passions, and some just fading away. And that's this thing about lots again. Lots of stuff going on. I tried to draw it. That's that. I tried to draw it. This is like 3 days ago in my kitchen. You can see this happening live on Twitter if you want. Live then, not now. Because I sometimes find myself trying to talk about this and I'm just going like that, because it is like just all this stuff. And the exciting thing about all this stuff is that it's just really important to be doing things and putting things out there, I think, as a creative person, now more than ever, doing lots of things. And they're not all going to be successful, they're not all going to work, they're not all going to have impact, but it's only by doing lots of things that you do some things that do work, do have impact, do get noticed by people. Just doing lots of stuff, I think, is really good. That's as compared to some kind of model where you just like make a thing and put it out there, wait, make another thing, big thing, lots of work goes into the thing, put it out there and wait. That's not so exciting. I suppose you could have another model which is more like various different people collaborating on one thing and coming together in a kind of spiral. That seems quite good, but basically, I like the messy, lots of stuff. And I think there's a lot to be said for messy, lots of stuff. And maybe that's kind of obvious, but there's certainly lots of people who are quite sad about the fact that it's just like, oh, why is all this stuff? There's no filters. How can I get my head around all of this? I think the lots of stuff is still good. We probably do still need better ways to find our way around it, that's true. But lots of stuff is good. This is about collaboration. Everybody knows collaboration is good, not even worth saying anything like this. Everybody likes to talk about collaboration. But collaboration varies a lot, doesn't it? I think I can keep this very simple, because I think what I found, and I've done lots of different sort of collaborations with organizations and things, is that, as in this blog post remind me of my point, the most important thing in anything is about making meaningful connections. In workshops, it's about making meaningful connections. In teaching, it's about making meaningful connections. In a thing like this, hopefully I say something that connects with your experience, even though I'm saying it all much too fast and you've just enjoyed a delicious sandwich lunch. But the good kind of collaboration, I guess, is often one that preserves the individual voice. There's some ways of trying to collaborate that kind of smoosh out the individual voice and just try to sort of get everything working very sort of seamlessly, smoothly, and it's less possible to discern the individual voices. I think what I've concluded on this one is that finding ways to get different individual sparky voices to sit together in a way that leads to something better, more exciting, is really, really good. And it'd be nice for us to share anecdotes about that or compare experiences, but I haven't got time, so I'm going to move on from that. The next one is about doing, just doing stuff. It's quite similar to the lots point, I suppose. Doing lots of things is good, but doing in itself, I think, is really valuable. It's easy to plan and to aspire. It's good to aspire, but it's easy to burn up quite a lot of time sort of thinking about the things that you'd like to be doing, drawing up lists of goals, planning and all of that. But just doing is really good, isn't it? With students, I always want to get people just doing stuff in the first time you meet them, to be making things together, just doing things. Especially doing things with your hands. That's a key thing I've learned from doing quite a lot of the work with Lego about this. Get people to stand up, get them to do things together, whatever kind of context we're talking about, any kind of collaboration, ideas building, learning kind of thing. Just get people moving, using their hands. It's just really powerful. You probably all know this already, don't you? But, so here's just because you know that already, I'll show you something you might not know about. I was really struck by this book called Musicking by Christopher Small, which somebody suggested to me for, I don't know why. It is really good. I think the reason they suggested it to me is because it's just all about process. You know, about process, which leads to products. As innovation people, maybe you think about products a lot, but I think it's also really good to think about the process. The thing about Christopher Small talking about musicking is he's just talking about process. It's a book about music, obviously, but he ducks, as you'll notice, he ducks using the word music on the cover. It says the meanings of performing and listening. And the title is Musicking, because he's invented this word, musicking, to mean the doing of music, because he's only interested in the doing. And he starts off this book, you read the first little bit, it's quite intriguing, you get onto like page 3 and he explains that music doesn't exist. I'm like, what? I like music. You like music? Music's good. Christopher Small says music does not exist. Music is an abstraction. The actual thing is people doing music. Music is a thing that people make in any particular moment. They're either making music or they're not making music. And he's got, he expands at great length. Again, haven't got time to go into it now, but you might want to look at the various ways in which music doesn't exist, because like for classical music people, it might be like a piece of paper with some stuff written down on it. But that's not what we think of as music. It might be this object where you go, oh, I love this music, let me give it to you. But that's not music either thing. Music is in the doing. And I think the extraordinary thing about it is that he's so focused on the doing of it, he wipes out everything else. He's only talking about the doing of it. And he thinks the doing of it is all about relationships. And the reason why we make music is because we're basically, when people make music together, they're trying to create this kind of aspirational version of how they think human beings should relate, basically. It's quite good. Takes a while to get your head around that, but that's pretty good. Maybe this is easier to get your head around there. So I was in Winchester Library. I live in Winchester. I was chasing around Winchester Library after my children who were looking for pictures of cats. If you've got children, you'll know that this sometimes happens. And I went past this book, which was a red book, this book called How to Be Here by Rob Bell, and I just stopped and picked it up. I don't know why. And I opened it on a particular page, and again, it's that serendipity thing. It's really weird. I opened it on the page which is shown here. I know you can't read it. That's fine. I'm going to explain. This page here, which I opened it on, is telling you about, in the movie Comedian, it's a film about Jerry Seinfeld finding his way back to stand-up comedy after he's been the star of an enormously successful TV series. And the movie follows Jerry Seinfeld getting back into the stand-up scene, and in the film's narrative, he keeps bumping into this young up-and-coming comic called Orny Adams. And Orny is 29, and in the bit that it talks about here, well then, Orny's saying, oh, don't you just sometimes feel like giving up? Because like all my friends have, like, they've got jobs and mortgages, and here I am trying to make it in the world of comedy, and he's just like finding it all so painful and thinking about giving up. And he's got all these complaints about how hard it all is, basically, which maybe you can understand, you know. Jerry Seinfeld's reaction is, are you out of your mind? He literally can't believe it. It makes him see, he can't believe, are you out of your mind? Quite an extreme, rude thing to say to somebody, really. Are you out of your mind? And he says things like, is there something else you would rather have been doing? Other appointments or places you've got to be? Because he just can't believe it, because for Jerry Seinfeld in this, it's just about the doing of it. There could not be anything better than the doing of it. The doing of it in this case is being a stand-up, so Orny is able to go on stage, make people laugh, do that every night, that's the thing that he does. And that, just doing it, is the one thing Jerry Seinfeld can't believe he'd ever be thinking about any of these other things, because just having the privilege to do it is enough and is exciting. And I like that point. You can at the same time sort of think, well, it's easy to say that when you're Jerry Seinfeld and you're a multi-millionaire and all that kind of thing. But also at the age of 29, Jerry Seinfeld was also unrecognized and in a similar kind of place. He just seems to believe that, I guess the point of this is, you've just got to keep going, and if you love it enough, and if you do it enough, then hopefully good things will happen. So I like that, especially, are you out of your mind? It's so emphatic. At somebody questioning whether it's going to pay off later on. Inspiration, I like to talk about inspiration because obviously inspiration goes two ways. There's the ways in which I might be able to inspire you if I'm lucky. There's ways in which you might be able to inspire me. And I think there's a kind of scaffolding which happens with inspiration. So I tried to find a picture of scaffolding. It's really hard to find pictures of scaffolding that don't just look awful. I found a Lego one, but it needs to go up and up and up. So then I tried drawing on the same day on my kitchen table, and it's like, that's not very nice. I'd rather go back to that one. But scaffolding is an idea from education, which is about how people learn, and it's basically like you sort of build up bits of knowledge together, and it's sort of one thing builds on top of another thing, and you can kind of fill this space. And different people can learn together and sort of teach each other things, and it goes like that. I think it goes like that for inspiration as well. So one person inspires another, and they sort of move up a bit, and it's like, oh yeah, so you did that thing, you did it like that, and somebody's inspired then. It's not necessarily that they copied what that person did, but they're just sort of inspired by the fact they did something a bit different. So then this person does something a bit different. I think you have a really powerful scaffolding thing when people inspire each other. That's what happens on online forums a lot. It's what happens on anything that's a successful platform for creativity. I like to talk about platforms for creativity, which can be anything, events, products, environments where people basically get this opportunity to kind of scaffold each other. They invite you in, you scaffold this kind of enthusiasm and do something new together. And that can be really amazing and powerful. And creating opportunities for people to do that is really good. I'm going to skip that. My time's nearly up, so thankfully I'm on number 6. This is just about making the decision to do a thing. Some of these are kind of, some of you might think these are obvious platitudes, but I think they're really important. They're things I like to talk about with students. Sort of commit to doing a thing, maybe commit to doing a thing within a particular block of time. So it's like, by the end of this, I am going to try to make something. And not worrying so much about whether it's going to be the best thing ever or whether it's going to be a world award-winning thing. Just committing to doing something. So you've got a thing that you can work on, you can change it, you can make it better. All of that can be really powerful. I was invited to do a talk for some music students recently, which was nice because it's a sort of different bunch of people to be talking to about creativity and making and all of that. They do that too, so it's nice. And I had to do a title again, so it's back to that thing of writing down the title. So I wrote down the title, Creativity, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It was late at night. I knew I hadn't plagiarized this. Well, I wasn't plagiarizing as such. I was going to admit to this not being my title, because Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway is the title of a famous book by Susan Jeffers, which I never read. But it's a good title, isn't it? I always like the idea of Fear the Fear and Do It Anyway. If I can say it, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And so then I was preparing this talk, and this was probably like on Monday before the Thursday when I had to do the talk, and I thought, oh God, I'm going to have to actually get that book, aren't I? Because it's ridiculous to not have even read the book. Thanks to Amazon, of course, you order it at 10 o'clock that night, and it comes at about 9 o'clock the next morning. So I was able to learn some things from this. It is really good. And it's got these rules, and I do have time to do them. Where's these rules? It's got truth numbered. I like a numbered list. You may have noticed. It's got truth 1, truth 2, truth 3. It's even got 4 and 5. I'm not going to tell you those ones, but I'm going to tell you 1, 2, 3. The first one is, it's about being creative. It's really good for creative, innovative people like you. The number one is, the fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. So basically, as long as you are continuing to do good stuff, you will feel fear, trepidation, you think, oh God, it's going wrong, am I putting all my effort into the wrong thing, should I be doing something else, what does everybody think of me, all of these things. That fear will be there. But truth one is basically you accept that and forget about it and get on with things. Truth two is, the only way to get rid of the fear is doing something, the only way to get rid of the fear of doing something is to go out and do it. So the only way you can get rid of that fear is to do stuff, basically. So that's good. I like that for students, so I always tell them to be doing stuff. And number three, this is the one I like best, and this is me on a Southwest Trains train. You might recognise the table, even though I tried to put a weird tint on it so it's not such a horrible orange table. Number three, I like this one, so I can put the book down now, thankfully. Truth three is, the only way to feel better about myself is to go out and do it, which seems kind of similar to the other one, but then I like this bit. It's got 3 lines, as you can see. That's my code for really good bit. Which that other Peter Corn one also had that in the margin, you may remember. The doing it comes before the feeling better about yourself. So you're not going to feel better about yourself unless you're doing it. The only way you're going to overcome the fear is by doing the stuff. So you have to be doing things. What she means is, I guess, you're never going to get to a point where the fear has gone away and so you're like, oh, right, good, I'm happy now and I can do all these creative things without worrying about anything. That is never going to happen. The doing it is always going to come before the feeling better about yourself. So you always need to be doing things in order to overcome whatever fears or concerns or paralysis you're experiencing. So it's just about doing things and knowing that that is scary and it might not work, you don't know what's going to happen, you might have invested quite a lot in it and you don't know how that's going to pay off. Ollie knows that feeling. But you just do it, and it's the only thing you can do. The only thing you can do is to try doing it and see what happens. And from that, there is learning, there is development. You learn from even mistakes that have gone that you made and things have gone wrong, like in that sentence. And then things get better. So that was me trying to write down 6 things. I'll just return to this bit. Hopefully, in some of this, you've seen some kind of connective tissue at least about that idea. That it's not just like, here I am, I want to make this thing, a very straightforward linear process. It's about engaging with lots of different ideas, it's about engaging with lots of different kinds of people. I'm sure you know this, I'm sure it's what you do in your life, but it's good to pick out these points and reiterate them, I think. It's about doing as much as you can to make life as interesting as possible, and then within that, you're going to have the interesting thing that you want to do. But it's only going to happen if you've already populated all the rest of everything, you've filled your nest with beautiful things, then you will also make the beautiful thing in the middle, and that'll be good. Okay, thank you.